Welcome to Innovating Music, a podcast from the UCLA Herb Alpert School of Music and the UCLA Center for Music Innovation. I'm your host, Dr. Gigi Johnson.
I love being a creative geek, and I was fascinated then at South by Southwest to meet Laura Escudé. She is possibly more of a fabulous creative geek than I am, working with anything from Ableton Live to her own wonderful violin skills to all sorts of great tools to create great live experiences. So enjoy this podcast discussion with her in May 2019, talking about her trek to being the magic inside of many artist tours, including all sorts of time on tour with Kanye, and how she takes technology to create all of the pieces and puzzle pieces of a great live experience, the systems, the people, the timing, time and space, all sorts of cool stuff. And also her discussion about limiting beliefs and looking at narrative around technology and how technology can be used to break limiting beliefs around technology. It is something that's really important, and a lot of the work of the Center for Music Innovation is looking at how narratives around technology impact our sense of the possible. So our conversation with Laura was right in our wheelhouse. Enjoy this conversation and all the things that this might spark as imagination in your head on how you might create and perform differently. Your session at South by Southwest was one of the ones I had digitally circled to want to come and see what you were doing with looking at how to create a great concert, a great venue experience. And I really didn't know what to expect, and you totally blew me away. How did you... Or can you maybe share with our audience what you did at South by and why you did it?
When I was preparing for South by, it was about a year before South by, I started coming up with ideas for what I would want to present. The art of designing a live show became the title. It kind of had a few different titles along the way, but I decided to incorporate my work with artists along the road, big name artists that I've toured with, as well as my own artistry as a solo electronic musician, into a 1-hour presentation on what it takes to create a compelling live show. And also some of the limiting beliefs that artists have when they're performing, and how to mitigate those limiting beliefs to overcome them using technology. The presentation was equal parts talking and speaking and explaining, as well as performing. So I got a chance to show what I do with technology and how I use that to press the limits of what I can do, what all of my equipment can do, and hopefully of the minds of the people in the audience.
So you were both playing the violin and working with Unreal Engine and working with all sorts of loops and other things. I want to come back to that because I want to come back to a few things you just said. One is the folks you've performed with. Can you maybe share with us a bit your journey and how you got to now?
Sure. So I'm a classical violinist and went to school for violin performance. Moved to LA, started working in the music tech industry, worked at a company called M Audio. From there, went to a company called Ableton, became certified in Ableton. I was actually the first certified Ableton trainer in the world, and became certified in 2008. That led to me getting calls from companies and artists, the first one being Cirque du Soleil in 2009. So I moved to Las Vegas and started programming their live show using Ableton Live. And at the time, I had no idea that that was even a job. I was like, wow, you want me to move to Vegas and do what? Sure, I will absolutely do that. It was an incredible experience. I learned a ton. On the heels of that,
Actually, before you move from that, what is programming a live show with Ableton Live? What are you actually doing before you move beyond that?
Sure. So we are responsible for, there's a lot of different things, but I'll just list all of the things. It depends on the artist and the show, but mostly editing all of the music that's being played back. So everything that the band is not playing is coming from a computer system. So that includes backing tracks, that includes clicks, that includes cues for in-ears for the musicians, and it also includes things like time code for lighting and video so that all the lights and video are perfectly synced with the music. It also can include vocal effects for artists, like auto-tune and delays and reverbs and pitch shifters and things like that. Drum sounds, keyboard sounds. It can include visual components. There's just so much it can do, but basically it can include one of those things or all of those things.
So you're dealing with a gigantic amount of equipment and people and moving parts and mapping time and place.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's dealing with a lot of communication between different areas of different groups of people and directors and the artist and designers and all of those people, and just working together to craft the best possible show.
So a wonderful blend of creative art and technical gizmos and people systems.
Absolutely. Yeah. Can I use that? I want to use that from now on. But no, absolutely. It's all parts of that, and especially, the creative part, because it really does take a very musical person, someone that knows how to create music, because oftentimes we are creating transitions between songs, we are creating sound effects, we are creating different versions of songs. So we are manipulating the audio and changing the audio, sometimes in real time during the show, and that takes a lot of creative effort. But then running all of this equipment, like you said, there's tons of gear that it takes and redundant systems, because when you're working at a high level, you don't want to just have one system that goes down, then you're up a creek without a paddle. So basically just running all of this gear, being very musical, making these edits, making the changes, and communicating with all the teams and making sure that everyone's on the same page.
Wow. So you went to Vegas, which is an interesting place to live. I've spent a lot of time in Vegas with a lot of friends in Vegas, with Cirque du Soleil, who had at that time how many shows running?
I think about 8 or so. I mean, they've always had a lot of shows, but I was working on the Viva Elvis show.
Oh,
that
cool.
was a brand new show at the time. Yeah, and got a great experience. Lived right on the strip there, which I wouldn't do again, but it was a fun experience at the time. And got a chance to really learn about the process of building a show. And the Cirque show is quite different to a lot of the other pop and hip hop shows that I've done after that, because there's a lot of by chance situations. So if a lighting thing doesn't move properly, or if a lift doesn't move, or if someone misses a trick, or if something happens, it's not just we're going to play the song down from left to right or top to bottom and that's it. Sometimes we have to catch a loop if something doesn't go according to plan. So it keeps you on your toes. You got to be constantly just reacting and watching and just being with the performance in the moment.
And from Cirque du Soleil, how did you end up then working with the various artists and tours and all the other things you've done?
So I came back in 2010 and had my first company, Evo Tech Audio. I was doing a lot of consulting for different brands, Ableton being one of them, F Expansion, Rob Pappen, a bunch of software companies. And I got a call from someone, a guy that worked at West LA Music, salesperson, and he said, "Hey, Kanye West's engineer wants to meet you because they want to use Ableton Live for their next tour." And I said, "Sure, I'll go meet with him." And so I started consulting with him and showing him things. And then he was kind of like, "Hey, you're better at this than I am, so do you want to do this gig?" And it was actually the worst timing because I was already booked on a tour. I was touring with this band called Niaz at the time, this Iranian electronic act, and I was playing violin and doing their Ableton Live stuff, and we had a European tour booked that summer, so I couldn't go, but I got a friend involved, and then the next year my friend couldn't do the gig, and then I could, and so I kind of came back and started touring with Kanye, and this was early 2011, and basically toured with him for many, many years, and did all of his vocal effects and his music playback.
So that's global, US, overseas, all sorts of environments. Any shareable fun or weird stories?
A lot. So many. Not a lot I can talk about here, but I just want to say it was an incredible experience. I mean, when I first met him and started working with him, I really didn't know his music or know that much about him. But, he's a very creative guy. And in those scenarios, I mean, things would change a lot. And it really kept me on my toes. And it really taught me how to be, to pull off almost anything in the moment. Even things that I didn't think I could pull off, I just pushed myself to just try. And most of the time they worked out. And so it was always a victory if it worked out. And, there were so many different tour cycles. So I got to see like the building of the entire show, the stage, the characters, the storyline, got to be a part of all of that. And that was really incredible. And got to play the biggest festivals in the world, Coachella and Glastonbury, and got to travel all over. And so it was just an incredible experience. And I got to do all the things that I love, which is, create music, edit music, put together music. And I really enjoyed doing the vocal effects as well, because in the moment I got to manipulate his vocals, and we got to improvise with one another. So that was really cool. Sometimes I would turn on a certain effect, like a delay or a distortion, and almost suggest it to him during the performances, and then he would hear that it was on, and he'd get excited, and then he'd start riffing off that. Or, I got to know innately like where he wanted to go with things, and I would just take a risk and try different things in the performances. So it was a very cool kind of relationship there, because I really got the opportunity to just be in the moment with him.
So where did that take you other than all over the world and onto main stages? What was your next part of your journey?
Well, through that, I got a chance to actually do a lot of my own composition, especially like for the Dark Fantasy tour. I did a lot of string arrangements. I also performed violin on the Watch the Throne album with Jay-Z, and started to just branch out and meet different people and do different music projects. And along the way, after getting known for pulling off the unimaginable,
being magic with music and tech,
yeah, I started to get a lot of different calls. And somewhere around 2012, I got a call from the Weeknd's management, and they said, we would really love it if you could come on tour. And we've heard lots of great things about you. And I said, I really love his music, and he was just starting out. I mean, he was a brand new artist at this time, but I said, I'm touring with Kanye, so I can't really commit to that right now. However, I have this other person that I really would like to put in place, and he works for my company. And this is where kind of electronic creatives had been born shortly before this. And so I just started getting all these calls and people wanting me to go on the tour, and me saying, well, I can't do it, but I have this other person, and then training people. And then that's how I built up my company, Electronic Creatives, is just by literally trying to clone myself and giving people opportunities. Like I wanted to give people opportunities that I felt deserved it, that I felt had the right attitude, the right disposition for touring, that were musical, technical, that were friends of mine that, I really wanted to see excel. And there's a number of scenarios where I really changed people's lives. They went from having a low paying job in the food industry to touring with some of the biggest artists in the world. And that was really gratifying for me as a mentor and as someone that likes to help. So that was kind of the next phase, was building the company. I mean, all the while I was still touring with Kanye and working with other artists. Besides Kanye, I also toured with Miguel and Iggy Azalea, and I worked with Herbie Hancock and Bon Iver and Garbage. And in some of these situations, I got to open for them as well, or play in the band. Like Miguel, I opened for him and played in his band. Garbage, I got to open for them and work on their show. And so there was a lot of crossover between me as an artist and me as a creative technologist in this time. So yeah, throughout the years, I just have programmed and worked with a ton of different artists to help them build their shows, and in many different avenues. So not just the pop and hip hop world, but artists like Porter Robinson, who wanted to do a one-man show with controllers and was moving from being a DJ, and so I helped craft that for him. And other artists like Herbie Hancock, who wanted to be more experimental and improvisational in his show. And I basically showed him what I was doing with my own one-woman show, and he took ideas from that and we adapted them and changed things and made it his own. So all of that was really fun. I just started to build up a large clientele of artists that trusted me and trusted my team, and just kept building.
And from there, you realized, this sounds like a very complicated life and a lot of trust in a lot of people. How did you build up the company to make that work for you?
Well, for years, it was just me doing everything. I was doing tech support, I was doing sales, marketing, accounting, bookkeeping, everything. I would get the calls in the middle of the night on the weekend. Something happened and this went wrong and I need help, or how do I navigate this situation? What do I say? How do I communicate this? All kinds of things. So it was like equal parts life coach and, technology coach. So through that, I started realizing, as we started growing, I started realizing I need help, and I started building my team. And so I hired a bookkeeper and an accountant first, of course, and then got a producer, someone to do the scheduling, and business manager. And then pretty soon I had a tech and an assistant, and then another tech, and so it just started growing and building, and I've built a really great community. We're still very small, but small community of incredible people who are all just willing to help each other, and there's this camaraderie and community that I really have fallen in love with, because a lot of times people don't want to share their secrets, and within my company and even beyond, there are no secrets. We'll share whatever it is that we need.
So early in our conversation here, you started talking about changing limiting beliefs. Can you return to that and talk about what you mean by that and why that is one of your superpowers?
Absolutely. Yeah. So a few years ago, I decided, I didn't decide. I got into this woman, Byron Katie, who...
Oh, sorry. I'm a fangirl there, but let me step back. Yeah.
Totally. So got into Byron Katie. My friend, my mom had been actually, and some friends of mine had been following her work, and my mom had gone to the School for the Work about 10 years ago, which is 9-day program. And, as the stresses of owning a company and being an artist and all of the communication that I regularly have to do, they were mounting, And last year I decided to take 9 days and go do the School for the Work. And it was the first time in my life that I had no phone or laptop for 9 days straight. And I gave myself a gift, and I told my team, and I was terrified. What if something blows up? What if something happens? What if? But that was exactly the reason why I needed to go and do this, because I was so in it. And I told one person from my team, okay, here's a number to my room at this place, and if you need to call, you can call, but otherwise, please don't. Only if it's an emergency. So I went to do the school, and it was the most incredible experience of my life. I mean, it was very freeing. After about the second day, I forgot about my phone and laptop, and I was just immersed in the work, as she calls it, and started to really study my limiting beliefs, my thoughts, and doing the work around it, and really uncovering why and what I was thinking, and just building that awareness and working to shift that. And so that was the beginning of the journey. I mean, I'd done other spiritual work before that, but this was very concrete, and it really spoke to me because it just was logical to me. It was like, oh, okay, we have these thoughts and we can question them, and it's just a thought. It's just something that I'm thinking. It doesn't have to take over my whole life. I can shift that. And so through doing the work, I came back and led my company differently, spoke to everyone differently, worked through some personal issues differently, and it just really changed things for me. And through doing that work, I started to look at, why I use technology. And I realized a lot of the times that I use technology to also overcome my limiting beliefs, because we all have these ingrained patterns, right? And some of mine were, I can't sing, or I'm not that great at on keyboards, or I don't know how to do this, or I'm not good at this. And I realize now that there's just so many tools out there to help people overcome these things. Like, for instance, one example is autotune. And before I worked with Kanye, I really kind of didn't care for it. I just thought, oh, anyone that uses autotune is a hack, and they're not a real artist or a real musician, because they're using this as a crutch. And after working with him and then using it myself, and seeing how it made him free, it gave him the ability to express himself in a way that he couldn't without the tool. And I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was amazing. And it really shifted my perspective of using something like that. And so I started just working on these ideas of how technology can help us with shifting our limiting beliefs. And there's so many ways and tools out there that we can use. And in other countries, like, they don't ever think to themselves, oh, I can't sing. Like, everyone sings, right? And in our culture, people are taught, not everyone, but a lot of people are taught, oh, I can't sing, I don't have a good voice. I mean, it's incredible how many people I've heard say this to me. And so to be able to use technology to overcome that, or augment your vocals or instruments or anything like that, I just think it's such a beautiful thing. And so I've been working a lot with pairing those things together, and finding technology that will help people to just express themselves and be the most free that they can be.
Excellent. A lot of my work is about narratives and technology, and social narratives about what we think is normal. So this totally is a magnet for my own thinking, as is the work of Byron Katie. And I wouldn't want us to oversimplify the work, but it's in some ways simple. What if the stories you tell are not true? What if the opposite is true? And lots of really interesting exercises. So if anybody is interested in listening to this, you can go enjoy the 9-day experience, which is massively valuable for people. And there's also great access through books and recordings and all sorts of other great stuff to sample that.
Absolutely. And if you're in Los Angeles, and if you're in Los Angeles, she does a New Year's Eve mental cleanse, and I go every year, and it's incredible. It's like a 3-day thing. So
Oh, that sounds intriguing for me. Cool. So you went from returning from that, but also around that, into also taking what you're doing and teaching, correct?
Yeah, so I had been a teacher before, 10 years ago, before I started touring, and I was an Ableton certified trainer, and so I was doing a lot of trainings then, and really just kind of put it to the side while I was touring. And about 3 years ago, I had a health crisis from touring too much, actually, and my body told me, you need to slow down. And so I listened to it, and I decided, okay, that's not the lifestyle that I want to live anymore. I've done that, and I had a great time, and now I'm being called to do some other things with my life, and so I spent the last couple of years really uncovering that. And I had an artist project called Alluxe that I was doing for many different years, and I decided to rebrand and shift back to my own name, and just do everything under my own brand. And so that was last year, and that was really incredible, and very freeing for me to not have to speak from different personas or different boxes or whatever you want to call it, and just really starting to own the fact that, yes, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a technologist, and I'm an artist, and I'm a performer, and I'm also a mentor, an educator. And so through this process, I started doing a lot more of my own shows, and that was a big thing for me, was to be performing more, because that's absolutely my most favorite thing in the world to do, to be sharing my art and my gift with other people. So in every performance, some of my close friends joke around when I'm performing, because I always do some sort of like tutorial in the performance midway, like to show the crowd, hey, this is what I'm doing up here. When I press this button, it turns this effect on, and when I, press this button on my foot pedal, it loops my violin, and then this loops my vocals, and this Wii controller here is manipulating my vocal effects, and all this kind of stuff. And so I just love to share what I'm doing while I'm performing. And so I decided, I want to take this to the next level and actually create some courses around this. So I created the Transmute course, and we had our first iteration of it this year. It was in February and March, and I'm going to run it again the summer of 2019. And I just decided I want to help people from all over the world to really discover and take their live shows to the next level, utilizing technology and using all these things that I've been working with. And so we did that online, and that was actually born out of a retreat that I did 2 years ago, also called Transmute. So this word about shifting energy spoke to me very much, and it's the name of a song that I produced that came out last year, and basically had a whole theme for me because I was going through this big transitional time and shifting from one place to another in my life. And I had created this retreat called Transmute, and it was in Florida, and it was incredible. It was live performance based, but it was also health and wellness. We had yoga and meditation, and it was an incredible experience. I thought, how can I bring that to the online platform? So I did. And we had people from all over the world, Singapore, Slovenia, UK, just everywhere. And it was beautiful. I mean, by the time we ended, no one wanted it to end, because the community and the camaraderie that had been developed through the program was amazing. So Transmute is one of my programs. Also, Master Track is a program that I ran in March. We did it last year as well, and it's so I should say that Transmute is for live performers who want to learn how to take their live shows to the next level using technology and all these things that I've been discussing. And it's a step-by-step process of doing that. And Master Track is a program. It's a in-person program in Los Angeles every year for people to learn how to do music programming and playback engineering. So like I was doing with Kanye and these different artists. And we've placed people from that program with some of the top artists in the world, Ariana Grande, Mariah Carey, Big Sean, Pentatonics. So that's incredible. And it was really, really amazing to do it for the second year this year and just see people develop and grow from it.
Laura, this does not sound like you're taking it easy. I don't hear taking it easy at all in this entire pattern here.
Well, yeah. I don't really know how to take it easy, but I love what I do, and it's all for my greater purpose, and so I love it, and I still do take it easy. It doesn't sound like it, but
well, let me back up on one more. Let me back up on one more thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned a Wii controller. What the heck are you doing with the Wii controller?
So I'm using it to manipulate my vocal effects in real time during my shows. And basically, it's a Bluetooth controller instrument that anyone can use and connect it to their laptop via Bluetooth. And there's a program called Osculator that you can convert the OSC messages to MIDI messages to control anything in Ableton Live.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then you're also using game engines. What the heck are you doing with game engines?
Yeah, so I'm using the Unreal Gaming Engine, and a friend of mine, Scott Pagano, who is a genius, and if you go to lynda.com and look up any Unreal program on there, he's taught it on there. And he's just a top designer. He's just been doing this for a long time, and he and I have been friends, and he said, I have this idea for something that you can do that would be really cool and far more interesting than just the regular visuals at your show. Because I was running visuals using Resolume at the time, which is fine, and I had some designers make me some perfectly fine visuals, but it was just, it was a little more static, and I wanted to be able to control the things on the screen. So he built this Unreal project for me and gave me the ability to manipulate and control the objects on the screen with my instruments. And another friend of mine had made this software program called MIDI Merlin, which allows you to convert audio to MIDI in real time, and it works fantastically. And so I was using MIDI Merlin to control the Unreal Gaming Engine with my violin. And so basically converting the violin in real time to MIDI to control it. And so that's what that is all about. And so I've been working on building more pipelines for that. And basically it's just I'm controlling everything on stage. It's I have a lighting rig as well that I control from my controllers. I press a button on my Ableton push controller. It can light up certain lights. And so I'm just manipulating everything in real time, and it's so fun.
Wow. This is why when I saw you, I was totally blown away by both the way you were essentially teaching the audience and describing things, but also the whole combination of ways to think about how to be an extended and expandable performer. You weren't just running the show, you were the show. And yet creating these overlays and expanded content around you is really wonderful. So I'm inspired. If there was anything that you could wave a magic wand to build that doesn't presently exist, what are you kind of missing, or what would be a further expansion of your superpowers?
I think it would be a gigantic dome with amazing sound, with really high-tech projections, and ambisonics and surround and all that, and just having that set up all the time for artists to be able to come in and perform and experiment with. Because a lot of the time, the artists that I'm working with now, it depends on the levels. Sure, I'm still working with top level artists that have access to, they've got resources. But it's funny, the top level artists that I'm working with in the pop and hip hop realm, they aren't trying to really push the boundaries like this with their music. They're more interested in going out and performing and connecting with the audience and performing their songs, which I totally get. But having a space for the artists that do want to push the boundaries that they can go to on a regular basis and to be able to experiment, myself included. This is a very selfish way. But there are some spaces that are popping up in Los Angeles that are really intriguing. I haven't seen one that kind of has the whole package together. But yeah, having a space like that for my projects would be incredible.
So investors and partners who are listening to this, please stay tuned, or please contact you. No, is there any last things you'd want to comment on as we wrap up here?
Well, yeah, one more thing, just in the vein of education. Through all this stuff, some people have said, well, I don't want to do a course, but I just want to be a part of your community. And I've created Elevate, which is my membership program. And every month I do a live presentation. I upload videos of different performances and sets that I've done. So recently I uploaded my Ableton session from the Grammys. I performed at the Grammys recently in the band, and did a whole session on how I set that up. And so I'm uploading videos, I'm having guest speakers and artists come on. There's a performance element to it, so all the people in the membership can upload their performances and get critiqued by the community. So it's just getting going now in May of 2019, and we've got some amazing artists and things planned, and it's going to be super fun. So if anyone's interested in checking that out, on my website, there's a link to it. It's called Elevate, and I'm really excited about it, to just continue on the journey with people and to really just grow together.
Anywhere else people can see your work right now? I think you're working on American Idol right now.
Yes, I'm working on American Idol right now. You can hear my work on that. And I'll be in the background doing the music programming, and that's super fun. Yeah, I've got some performances this summer. I'm playing at Oshega in Montreal, a festival, and doing some talks and presentations. And so there's tons of stuff coming up. So if you want to go to my website and sign up for my mailing list, you can.
And your website is your name?
Yep, lauraescudé.com.
Excellent.
And my company is electroniccreatives.com.
And we will have links to all sorts of great things in the notes for this podcast. Thank you so very much for joining us. It is always fun talking with you, and I'm looking forward to further conversations and checking a lot of this stuff out, and appreciate your joining us.
Thank you, Gigi. This is so much fun. I really appreciate you finding me after my presentation at South by. And also for the listeners, I want to just say that she was the only person that raised her hand every single time I said, does anyone know what I'm talking about?
We were joking. We were joking around also that, and I don't know if this young man ends up listening to this, but a young man walked up to me afterwards going, "You were the only person to raise your hand," and then proceeded to feed me all sorts of other great South by Southwest information. So it is one of my favorite events of the year, is that I get to see and connect with people and things that I don't normally see in my everyday crazy life. So I appreciate that whole connection. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that wraps up this podcast. Many thanks to the UCLA Herb Alpert School of Music and the UCLA Center for Music Innovation for being our hosts of this ongoing series. You can subscribe to us in all the usual places, or you can come find us at innovation.schoolofmusic.com. www.ucla.edu. Join us again to follow the other adventures that we will be tracking down in innovating music. Thanks again.